You may not know it, but you have someone in state government whose sole job it is to represent you, the rate-paying customer of the utilities of New Hampshire. The consumer advocate, Don Kreis, is our guest today. And thank you for joining us, Don.
Pleasure to be here.
So let's start by having you describe what it is you do on behalf of ratepayers.
My job is to advocate on behalf of the interests of residential utility customers. So all of us regular people in our homes are paying bills to our electric, natural gas, and some of us to our water utilities. And I appear at the Public Utilities Commission and other places to make sure that those folks get a decent deal.
I think the question a lot of people have generally in New Hampshire, why does energy generally cost so much here in the Granite State?
Well, that's a very complicated question to answer. One answer is that we're up here in the cold upper right corner of the United States. We're far away from supplies of things like natural gas, and so it's expensive to move fuel here. Another reason, I think, is that we have spent a lot of money building up our electricity transmission system, and we're all paying for that, and the reduced wholesale costs of power have benefited largely the big industrial and commercial customers, less so individual residential ratepayers like you and me. And part of it, I think, is that we don't rely enough on energy efficiency, because we could squeeze more work out of each energy that we use and save money that way.
And I think, the question is, and you get to take a position on this, is what should be done about that high cost of energy?
There are a bunch of things that we need to do. We need to diversify where we get our energy from. We need to make sure that residential customers are paying their fair share of the costs. And we need to double down on energy efficiency, so that, because the cheapest way to meet the next unit of demand for electricity and natural gas is actually by not using it, again, by squeezing more work out of that energy.
And we've seen big idea projects like Northern Pass and Northeast Direct and Granite Bridge all go down in the last few years. Is that a good thing or a bad thing for the customers you represent?
I think that in general it is a worrisome thing. It's hard to lump natural gas pipelines like Northeast Direct in together with transmission lines like Northern Pass. Northern Pass was designed to move electricity from Quebec down into Massachusetts, and we're pretty indifferent to that here in New Hampshire. But we do need to make sure that we get adequate supplies of natural gas so that our natural gas utilities can serve us. And I think that our utilities are quietly making sure that those things are happening. So I'm not concerned, but in the long run, we need to find ways to make sure that the infrastructure we need can and does get built.
Do you worry or have to worry at all about supply in the long term? We hear ISO New England talking about this with more and more generators, power generators going offline over the last decade and looking ahead. Is that something you worry about?
It's something I think about. I am not worried about it because ISO New England tells me, at least, that we do have an adequate supply of power. What ISO New England needs to plan for are the days when the power grid is stressed, either when it gets really hot here in the summer or when it gets really cold in the winter. We're very reliant on natural gas generation, and our ability to move natural gas into New England is constrained. And so the answer to that is diversity. And one of the ways we're diversifying is by looking seriously at building lots of wind turbines off the coast of New England, because the Gulf of Maine is the Saudi Arabia of wind power.
How long would it be until we start to see something like that materialize, until New England becomes that Saudi Arabia of wind?
Well, it's already started, but it does take a long time to develop and permit facilities like that. But I think 10 years from now, we'll be looking at a very different energy picture here in New England.
How much is home generation and net metering going to be part of the solution? We see some people are able to afford that and do that with their homes, others can't. But are we going to see more of that in the future as well?
We are lagging behind our neighbors when it comes to net metering. I think we can and should see more of it. The concern here in New Hampshire has been so-called cross-subsidization. If you pay people a premium to produce power on their roofs, those who can afford to do that get to reap the benefits of that, and those who can't or won't do that then end up paying extra money in their electric bills. And so we have a multi-year argument going on what the right balance to strike there is. But it's doable. And I think we're slowly but surely figuring that out.
Speaking of balance, how do you strike the balance of representing the consumers, advocating for those needs of the energy customer, with also trying to take on what many view as the existential threat of climate change?
I do not consider my mission to include dealing with what you just described as the existential threat of climate change. I agree with that as a citizen. But there are other organs of state government and other organizations in the nonprofit sector who are very vigilantly arguing about the climate change crisis before the same decision-making bodies that I go to. What I do is simply remind everybody that whatever we do about climate change, and we certainly should do something, ultimately the bill for that is paid for by utility customers, particularly residential customers.
When you talk about the spectrum of all of these organizations that are involved in the energy conversation, that's going to change a little bit in the weeks and months ahead here as New Hampshire creates a Department of Energy. What's going to be the impact from your perspective on how this sort of framework will alter and people will be served by it?
I'm very enthusiastic about the birth of the New Hampshire Department of Energy. I think it does a few things. I think it makes energy much more visible as a policy imperative here in state government. And since the governor will appoint the energy commissioner and it will be part of his administration, I think it will give the governor, both the incumbent governor and future governors, much more skin in the game when it comes to energy, so it'll have more prominence. And people who formerly were part of the staff of the Public Utilities Commission will now work for the Department of Energy. That will make them more publicly accountable. And I think ultimately we'll have better discussions about energy policy in New Hampshire. They'll become more public. They'll probably become somewhat more political, but small p. And I think in the long run, we and our environment as a state will be better off.
And kind of a wide open question here, but what is it about energy policy in New Hampshire that keeps you up at night worried?
That's a really great question. I am always worried because my job is to advocate on behalf of residential customers, that residential customers are not getting their fair share of the benefits of the energy system that we have all been paying for the last several decades. We set a lot of policy change in motion because of the difficulties that we had back in the 70s, 80s, and 90s with the Seabrook nuclear power plant. We restructured our electric industry. That cost a lot of money, and it's time for residential customers to start getting some benefit from that.
Who should be calling you, I guess? What is that bread and butter case that you like to take up? If somebody picks up the phone and says, well, this just happened to me. So who are the kind of people you would say, like, hey, give me a call if this happens?
Well, our office doesn't process individual consumer complaints. I love it when individual customers call me up and want to talk to me about something that happened to them. And if I decide that it reflects a trend, I will act on it. But as far as helping individual customers address problems on their electric bills or their natural gas bills or their water bills, the folks to call now are the consumer assistance team at the Department of Energy.
All right, and one last question here. I know you talked about energy efficiency. If New Hampshire had to choose essentially between, renewables or energy efficiency, what would be the smarter bet in the short term and the long term?
The smarter bet in the short term is definitely energy efficiency, because we have far from exhausted the cost-effective energy efficiency potential. And while it's great to use renewable energy, just simply using less energy to do the same amount of work has enormously huge environmental benefits, because there are no emissions associated with energy efficiency, and it's the cheapest thing to do. In the long term, we need to make sure that we build a robust and diversified energy system so that we're making use of all of the available cutting-edge energy production technologies.
All right, Don Kreis, New Hampshire's consumer advocate. We always learn something when we talk to you. We appreciate your time here on Close Up.
Always a pleasure.
All right.